afternoon, everybody. At the outset, I have to thank you for making me a part of this. And though I was hard pressed, but since I have been a part of your earlier events as well, so I thought let's not break the cycle. And I'm sure each one of us goes back wiser than before after having attended a session over here. Having said that, I think my first thought would be that this Economic Times Digi-Tech Conclave happening today is also not only the most appropriate time to do so, but also one of the better times from the Indian perspective, the Indian context, because we have a political dispensation in place under Prime Minister Modi, which is much, much more enabling, supportive, and forthcoming than ever before, and also open to allow us to experiment, to take out-of-box decisions, sometimes to break taboos of the past, if we have the conviction, commitment, and the sincerity to do so. And I think in the world of technology, as much as in the digital world, you cannot get away if you don't have the evidence about what you're talking. So I think the best evidence comes from the space sector, where we not only broke the taboos of the past, but we opened up the space sector in such a huge manner to the private sector that it's become one of the very rapidly growing space economies in the world, contributing hugely to the India's space economy. And very recently in the budget presented about a month or so ago, we had a very revolutionary and unorthodox announcement being made of the nuclear sector being opened up to private players, which is something which never was imagined by anybody, nor had anybody expected or hoped to do so. And that's why I say this is now possibly the beginning of an age where there's an acceptability and a milieu of a larger integration between the private sector, the public sector, and across the departments and the ministries in the government, as well as is being witnessed over here, because the banner has the name of a ministry, but you have the ministries from all over the world. So it's whole of science, whole of government, and also whole of nation now. So in that context, I think when you talk of India's digital transformation and India's digital public infrastructure that you try to devote this theme to makes it also very different and peculiar, because India has today been able to record some of the success stories which are being emulated by the rest of the world. So we are no longer actually emulating what is happening in the other countries, which was so till a few years ago or a few decades ago. We would wait for an experiment to take place, a technology to happen. Then after we learned the success of it, that suddenly we woke up and tried to also follow it. And by that time, they would move on to the next generation. So we were always 10, 15 years back. Like, for example, television happened in the United States in 1950s. You got to see the first Chitrahar in Delhi only in 1970. So that was so, but it's no longer so. So some of the initiatives of India today have become case studies for others, and we have now also seen delegations coming from other countries to study our role models, not only strictly in the technology, but also in the governance field, where the governance also is hugely loaded with technology. Like, for example, in the last 3 months itself, we had a delegation from Maldives, a delegation from Bangladesh, a delegation from Nepal, delegation from South Africa. Because they are amazed the manner you have evolved something like CP grams, the unique grievance redressal mechanism, your RTI on the WhatsApp, which was earlier, a 10 to 4 phenomena. So, if you talk in those terms, I think Aadhaar is one of the success stories which would be quoted and also referred. Whenever an initiative like this is undertaken in any part of the world, they would try to look back and say, let's see what India has done, and then try to improve upon that if we can. Similarly, the direct benefit transfer is something that even some of the so-called developed countries have been talking about, asking us whenever you have a delegation from abroad, they wish to understand. Not only it has given us dividends in the terms of the huge saving on the state exchequer, lakhs and crores of rupees, which was being squandered away for unreasonable reasons, But it has also proved to be a very prompt and a very foolproof, seamless manner of reaching out to the beneficiary even when all other systems of communication or reaching out break down, as you saw happening in the pandemic. So one reason India did not suffer the similar kind of constraint as other countries was we were already having in place something like this. Not that this had been prepared with pandemic in mind. I'm sure everybody would agree with me in this room that nobody could foresee a COVID coming. Nobody knew about what COVID was all about till about 2019. But when it suddenly struck us, we could manage it because we were already prepared for it. And I think again the credit goes to the present government because right from 2014 we had started working on it. Our government working was almost 90–80% online, at least in the central government. That's the reason not even one single day there was a disruption in the official work during pandemic. You could manage work from home, you could manage work from wherever, you can manage work from lockdown. Because you already put those systems in place. If you had to do that after the pandemic, you wouldn't have been able to do so. That's the difference. That's what the other countries now look up to. And that is also one of the merits of the unified payment interfaces, the DigiLockers, and e-governance, of course, your MyGov, and also Mission Karmayogi have become one of the most talked about stories. When a civil servant gets transferred from one assignment to the other, he does not have to pretend to be know-all. He can actually develop the confidence of learning it. Like sometimes I say in a lighter way that the civil servant is taught in the academy to run the writ of the authority, which is not his fault. He has to govern, he has to administer them. So what happens is that suddenly one fine morning he's asked to take over as health secretary and feel like pretending to write a prescription better than a doctor to prove that he's better versed. So that's not something to grudge him, but with this module like Mission Karmayogi, he would be actually having the confidence to do so because he would be able to prepare himself instantly, online, on a real-time basis, without wasting time, real-time without wasting time, while traveling in car, commuting between his residence and his office. Our AI data in governance is again one of the earliest initiatives in the world. We have an India AI mission. If I talk about that, it will take another 1 hour. When either you have time to listen to me for very long, nor do I have time to bore you for very long. So both of us have to go on with the next business. But we have an AI mission with 6 verticals in place. So this is going to do wonders. In your health sector, Ayushman Bharat is one of these schemes which the other countries are trying to study. So these are 5 or 6 role models which have actually been universally acclaimed. I think the only, I don't know how many of us realize, the only and possibly the first ever health insurance scheme in the world which allows you to get insured for a pre-existing disease. You develop cancer today, or anyone for that matter, not certainly any of us. I wish nobody develops that. But if one has been detected as having cancer today, he can get or she can get herself or himself insured tomorrow and start treatment using the benefit of the insurance. No other health insurance company across the world, even in the most advanced Europe countries, would allow that. Even if you get, God forbid, a heart attack and you ask for the insurance benefit, the health insurance company tries its best to prove that you had a heart ailment before you got insured and you had hidden it, you had camouflaged. And therefore they try to deny it because the first condition is that you are insured only for the organ which is absolutely healthy. And there are many ways to prove that nothing is healthy. And that's what they do. So this was such an open experiment, and which has not only given a financial benefit, but has changed the entire socio-economic landscape. And of course, we have been equally careful about the Data Protection Act and when you talk of BharatNet, I think, because that's not strictly in the domain of this ministry, but if you talk at a whole, because the subject is too large to be left to a single ministry alone. The other one of the most talked about initiatives which is being discussed in other countries as well is the Swamitva program, where you allow the citizen to be the master of his own destiny. You can map your land, your farms, without seeking the help of a patwari or a revenue officer. So that's a huge, huge 360 change. Instant, accurate, and also legally viable. And you've already done mapping for almost 60-70% of the Avadi area of this country. And I think one of the good things that has happened in the last 10 years is, as I was mentioning in the beginning, that there's a total integration of the private and the public sector, that skepticism is no longer existing. You don't look at the private sector, the government sector does not look down upon the private sector as people, as a bunch of black marketeers or fleecers. And the private sector also does not look up to the civil servants and the officers as a bunch of bribe takers. So they have learned to live with each other, also learn to adjust with the goods and bads of each other. But that's essential, because if you have to ride together on a single bus, you don't know who's sitting beside you. It could be a saint, it could be a scoundrel, but the destination is common. So if we have to reach the destination that we are envisaging for ourselves, and the figures that have started, startling the world now, are also emanating only in the recent years. In space, as I said, we were nowhere. Today we are 8 billion US economy, US dollar, and the projection is so optimistic that in next 8-10 years we hope to go up by 5 times, almost 45 billion. Even in your patents, not only the number of patents is increasing, what is important to understand is, I think many people, doesn't occur to many people, is that more than 55% of the patents are by resident Indians. They're not by non-resident Indians. So gone are the days when you would say, "Arey saab kar to liya to kya hua? Khurana bahar gaya to tab hua. Chandrasekhar bahar gaya to kya?" So you would condemn everything in India. And the benchmark was that if you have talent, you have to go outside, and then only you can realize your talent. But here, the majority of patents today are by Indians who have never left India. Born here, brought up here, groomed here, trained here, capacity building here, and finally patent finding for so. So that is the difference between yesterday's India and today's India. Your number of publications is almost number 4 and number 3 in the world, and the future projection shows that by 2030 you will overcome USA. Your PhD has gone up rapidly. So all this is an evidence-based growth which has convinced the world that India has arrived and India is a country to look up to, and we today are no longer followers, but could be giving leads in more ways than one. So I think that is precisely what I want to say, otherwise this subject is so close to the heart of many of us that we could discuss it the whole day. Thank you very much.